felt at the time that I was being a bad dad. I was being a bad role model for my son. And this wasn't something that came about overnight, although the realization of the alcohol in my life and how that was affecting my son, that sort of came about overnight. And it's kind of sad to sort of say that. Hey, how you doing? Welcome to another video. Today I want to talk about the imperfections of being a dad. These same things can be applied to if you're a mom, if you're a parent, any type. Imperfections of being a human being, I suppose. If you're new to this channel, a lot of what I talk about here is about habit change and about trying to get to the best possible version of yourself. I think if you go back through the videos, the majority of the stuff that I do is about alcohol, about stopping drinking alcohol, and how alcohol is a huge detrimental influence on anybody's life, and there are severe consequences. Obviously the more that you drink, the more severe those consequences are going to be. But even if you're drinking a small amount of alcohol, psychologically there are consequences to that in how they play out in your life. Life is all about choices and trade-offs, and when you make the choice of putting a poison into your body, even in small amounts, there is a trade-off that you make for that, and it's usually in the sense of how you view yourself and you view life, and how you view something like taking something from the outside, a medication, in order to change something on the inside, right? So I stopped drinking alcohol 10 years ago because I wanted to be a better father. I felt at the time that I was being a bad dad. I was being a bad role model for my son. And this wasn't something that came about overnight, although the realization of the alcohol in my life and how that was affecting my son, that sort of came about overnight. And it's kind of sad to sort of say that about myself, and to realize that that's where I was 10 years ago in comparison to where I am now, and to the way that I live my life now. And I started out this journey really trying to be the best possible version, of the best possible dad that I could be. I wanted to be the best possible dad, and there's nothing wrong with it. That has evolved over the years into trying to be the best possible version of myself. That's a journey that has taken me, like I said, 10 years to come to. It's taken me a lot of hard work and a lot of thinking, a lot of uncomfortable thinking, a lot of suffering, but I've gained so much out of it from that perspective. And I want to address the issue of trying to be the perfect father. Imperfection is a fact of life. It's a fact of human existence. It's a fact of human flourishing. If you want to flourish in this life, you have to make mistakes, because the only way that we learn is by making mistakes. The only way we move forwards, if you're completely satisfied with who you are and what you are, then what's the point? You're never going to take any action, because I am who I want to be, right? It's this kind of attitude of, well, the world should just accept me as who I am. No, that's not the way it works. The way it works is that we're all figuring things out, not only now, regardless of what age you are, whether you're 5 years of age, 25 years of age, or 85 years of age. Everybody is still trying to figure this shit out, figure themselves out, figure their own place in the world, and trying to improve themselves. It is that drive for growth which moves us forwards. So from that perspective, nobody is perfect. Perfection is just not something that we have, because if we had that, we wouldn't have that impetus to grow. right, to become something better, right? If you're already the best version of yourself that you can be. So when I'm talking about getting to that best possible version of myself, the highest possible version of myself that I can have, I'm also talking about it from the perspective of this is a journey. This is not a destination that I am ever going to get to. It's not the destination, hopefully, that you ever get to, right? Because what then? What happens after that? Now, the imperfection of this is when you have children, the next generation is always supposed to be better than the last generation, right? Always. You know, the next generation is the new and improved version of the next generation. You know, when I look back at my parents and my mum and dad, especially my father, I look back at the amount of things that I learned from him, good lessons, right? Solid lessons, how to work hard, how to try and tell the truth as much as you possibly can. But there were certain things that I just never learned from my dad, because my dad never taught me. My dad never had those lessons himself. So if he never had those lessons himself, how the fuck is he going to teach me those things? You know, my dad was a worker, but he was also a lover. You know, there was 9 kids in our family, and my dad was a blue collar worker, so he was always struggling, always. So that was one of the things that I learned. I think this generation has learned in general is that you know, it costs a lot of money to have kids. I think it costs a lot more nowadays to have kids than it ever did before. But the point is that I learned so much from my dad's imperfections, from the things that my dad got wrong. And I'm not saying anything wrong about my dad, because you have to look at it from the perspective of that's how your children learn a lot of what they're doing. Not when they're young. I mean, when they're young, they don't see the imperfections. They see you as being the hero. And we all want to remain as the hero. You know, no dad wants to grow up and see their children looking at them and going, oh, I don't really agree with you on that, you know, or yeah, I don't like that about you. You know, I'm not going to do that when I grow up. I mean, we want our children to look at us and go, yeah, Dad, you're the perfect one. You're the GOAT. You know, I want to be just like you. I mean, think about that from the perspective of, imagine if you are the true GOAT in the world, like if you are the Michael Jordans of the world, or I would like to say Will Smith. Well, I'll say Will Smith because he's got a lot of kids that are trying to follow in his footsteps. Imagine being that person, and your children are trying to follow in your footsteps and never going to make it. I mean, Will Smith's kids, right? God love them, right? And not Will Smith, right? Michael Jordan's kids are not Michael Jordan, and they're never going to be Michael Jordan. I mean, he's one of a kind. So imagine having that as your mentor, this is the person that you're supposed to follow in life. You know, that's a hard act to follow. And whenever you see these kind of things, you know, there's so many different stories of Hollywood actors whose sons have just hit the rocks, or their children have hit the rocks because they can't they can't escape the shadow, they can't come out of the shadow and be their own person, because they're always associated with that person, or they can't remain in the shadow because it just undermines who they are as individuals, right? So it is through your own the things that you get wrong in your life, the things that you know, maybe you got these things right when you were younger and in a different time, and now it's changed. I mean, you know, we can all look around and we can all see a certain madness around us now, but I don't think that's the fault of the parents. I think, you know, you grow and, you know, the next generation comes along. It's like when you're a kid and your father says, what the hell is that music you're listening to? And you think, this is the best music of all time. What are you talking about? You know, and that kind of thing will always give you a different. It will give you a different viewpoint on the world. Sorry, we're just passing a few cows here on the side of the road. So I'll show you some of this is where I'm driving today. It's up in the mountains. This is a track that we found. To be honest with you, everything around here is full of this kind of stuff. So I'll just try and shift it around here. I guess what I'm trying to say to you is that the only perfection in life is this kind of perfection. You know, where there's no thinking to it. It's just being. We're thinking beings, and therefore we're always trying to improve ourselves. We're always trying to grow. I think that's one of the problems and mental health issues is where you don't see a possibility for your own growth. I think that can cause a lot of damage, psychological damage to a person, where you just cannot see a way out of the situation that you're in. I think it's one of the reasons why people drink a lot or take drugs, is because they just see themselves as being stuck, not being able to move. But a lot of the time, I think people see imperfections in themselves, and they're trying to iron out all these imperfections that are impossible to iron out. You know, sometimes you have an imperfection and you iron it out, and it just creates another imperfection. You know, and it layers these imperfections, and before you know it, you're knee deep in a situation that you just you cannot move out of. So, you know, just realize that your children learn a lot when you're younger from the things that you do, right? Just by following you and growing up. When they're young and naive, you know, you grow up thinking that, you grow up trying to emulate the person who is closest to you, the person who is showing you that leadership or the adulthood or whatever it is. And when you grow older then, and you start to get independent, you start to become independent of your parents, then you start to think yourself, and a lot of the time you learn through the imperfections of your parents. And that is exactly the same way, however much we don't like it and however much we don't want to see that, you know, we don't want to admit that about ourselves, that our kids are going to learn from our own imperfections. That is just a fact of life. Just thought I'd do one of that today. We're going to do a lot more on this channel about fatherhood, and you know, I can talk about parenthood, but I much prefer to talk about it from the perspective of fatherhood, and then you can adapt things yourself if you want to apply these things. I mean, like I said, these are lessons that I've learned in my life that are as applicable to mothers as to fathers. So yeah, that's where I am. Listen, take care of yourself, and I'll speak to you again in the next video. If you want some help to stop drinking alcohol, you know where we are, habitsv2.com, www.habitsv2.com, and there's a course down below that you can download, which will help you to prepare to stop drinking alcohol. So until next time, speak to you soon. Bye now.